It's great to see you guys. Thanks for coming to worship with us here at Neighborhood Church. We say we exist to lead our neighbors to life-changing relationships with Jesus because we believe that when we meet Jesus, everything changes. He transforms us from the inside out. He invites us into a relationship. And one of the ways that he changes us and works on our hearts and our lives and transforms us is through his word. And so that's why we teach a message from the Bible every Sunday here at Neighborhood Church. And I'm going to start the message this morning with something that may seem a little out there, a little odd to start a message from the Bible, but here it is. I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you. Nobody likes a freeloader, right? You probably have, as soon as I said that, somebody came to mind, right? You're thinking of somebody, that person in your life. When, right after Victoria and I got married, this was actually still at our wedding reception, my dad pulled me aside and he said, "Congratulations, son, really proud of you." He said, "David, it's time to get your own cell phone plan." I said, "Dad, can I at least wait till the morning, maybe till after we get back from the honeymoon?" He's like, "You have a month." Which I'm like, okay, that's a little tight time frame, but I guess I'll take it. And the more I thought about that, the timing, of course, is really funny that it was at our wedding reception. It's like, "Dad, can I at least get a couple hours?" But there's actually a biblical truth in that. And it goes all the way back from Genesis chapter 2 when God creates Adam. He says, "It's not good for man to be alone." He creates Eve. And Adam looks at Eve and said, "This is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh." And then God says, "Therefore, a man will leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife." And so I kind of see, although the timing was maybe not ideal, see what my dad was trying to do. Like, "Son, you no longer have a responsibility as part of my household. You don't have a responsibility to the household of your mother and father because you now have a wife. You're building your own household. That's where your responsibility lies. But here's the thing, if you don't have responsibility in this household, then you also don't get benefits from this household." There's an expiration date to the benefits. Maybe you've been there with your kids. Maybe you're waiting for the day for it to come with your kids where you say it's time for your own cell phone plan. It's time for you to buy your own car insurance. Maybe it's a roommate for you or that group project in school or at work. Nobody likes a group project, right? We all roll our eyes because we know some people do all the work. Some people do none of the work but get the same amount of credit. We know how this goes. Maybe it's just your friend group. There's always somebody in every friend group. If you're not sure who it is in your group, it might be you. Just going to put that out there. So what do we do about this problem? It's everywhere, right? Nobody likes a freeloader. But here's the true problem statement, okay? Here's our true problem that we're going to talk about this morning. Nobody likes a freeloader, but we all want to be one. Right? We all like the benefits. No work, all the benefits, right? Nobody likes a freeloader, but if we get the opportunity, we'll probably do it. I know I have my excuses. You probably have your excuses too, right? Well, I'm just too busy right now. I've got too much going on. I'm too tired, which really most of the time just kind of means I don't really want to. We know how that goes. Or, I don't have enough money right now. It's not the right time. We say, maybe next time I'll pick up the tab, or maybe next year. And I know how that goes. And your life is probably the same. Every time I think, in a couple of weeks, things are going to slow down. It's all going to be good. I can, catch up on some things. And 2 weeks from now, it's crazier than it was when I said that. So it's not just something we can do later. Right. And it's not just about money. Oftentimes when we think of the word freeloader, we think about money, but it's also about time. It's about energy. It's about other resources that aren't money. This is a problem that's been around for a long time. Ronald Reagan in the 80s had a great quote about freeloaders that I'm going to read. And this is not to tell you whether I agree with it or not. I don't really even want you to think about whether you agree with it or not. But here's the quote. Ronald Reagan, one of the most respected, I think widely respected U.S. presidents, said, "Unemployment insurance is a prepaid vacation for freeloaders." My only point in reading that is this has been a conversation for a long time. That was in the 80s. And obviously leading up to that, there were conversations going on that led him to say something like that. And it's not just out there, right? We think of a lot of problems. We come into church on Sunday mornings and we're like, that's an out there problem. That's a everyone else problem. That's a politics problem. That's a government problem. But I want to tell you this morning that it actually is right here in the church. We see it here. It's not just out there, but it's here. And that's the lens we're going to talk through this morning. But I think, if you're listening close, we're going to talk about the church, not just the church, but the church as a community. And this idea of kind of no work, but all the benefits. But it applies just about anywhere. There's principles that we can take anywhere. And I think Reagan was talking about a sense of duty, right? We need to, like if you want the benefits, you got to do the work. If you want the rewards, you got to have the responsibility. I don't think the sense of duty really gets us very far. And this is just a cultural observation, not to say anything positive or negative. You're welcome to your own opinion. I think the sense of duty in our culture is going away. I think it's less and less. So if we don't really have this sense of duty, what do we have to go on? I think it's something that's much more important, something that we all have, that universally everyone in some form is seeking, is community. So how do we approach this from the lens, like I said, of community? What can we do? And we're going to be in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Again, the last chapter of 2 Thessalonians, our second to last week of our series, A Simple Life, Finding Meaning in the Mundane. What does all of this talk about freeloading and rewards and responsibility have to do with us and have to do with a simple life? And when we ask the question, what do we do about the problem? We're going to start with really the one place that we can start, which is ourselves. And along the way, we're going to talk a little bit about what do we do? How do we respond when we see this in others? And next week, we're going to kind of continue that idea a little more of what do we do when we see this in others, and not just this specific thing of kind of no responsibility, but getting the benefits, but also just this problem of sin in general. What do we do when we see that, especially, particularly in other believers, other people who are following Jesus? What do we do when we observe sin, when we see, pushing back, rebelling, going the other way from God? And as I said, we're going to do this from the perspective of the church as a community, but it's going to apply anywhere. I hope you'll see this morning that you can take some of these principles and apply them just about anywhere. So here's 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, starting at verse 6. We'll go through verse 13 today. It says, "In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we command you, brothers and sisters, to keep away from every believer who is idle and disruptive, and does not live according to the teaching you received from us." So we're supposed to keep away from these people, is what these writers, Paul and Silas and Timothy, are saying. Keep away. Now, this doesn't mean, shun from your life. It doesn't mean hold at arm's length and never speak to again. What it really means is to kind of withdraw a little bit, restrain yourself from that person. Not only, don't become like that person, but don't give every last penny to that person who's not going to give anything in return and not even going to thank you for it, right? Part of this community, but they're not contributing, right? And all three of these descriptions, there's actually two. This word in the original Greek that this was written in, idle and disruptive, is actually one word. But we'll call it two descriptions. And then does not live according to the teaching you received from us. That's our third description. These three descriptions are not about three different people. They're actually describing the same type of person or the same group of people. And we don't really use the word idle and disruptive together very often. We think of idleness as kind of this passivity, this stepping back, stepping away, kind of shying away. But the way that this word kind of functions in the original language is it's not passively stepping away. It's actively avoiding. It's not just standing as work passes you by. It's like there's the work and I'm actively backing away from it. So there's some action happening here. There's disruption and distraction of others that's happening here because of this type of idleness. And so Paul and Silas and Timothy, writing to the church of the Thessalonians, say first that keep away from these people, and then they're going to say follow our example. Here's the example that we gave you, and we see this starting at verse 7. "For you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example. We were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. On the contrary, we worked night and day, laboring and toiling, so that we would not be a burden to any of you. We did this not because we do not have the right to such help, but in order to offer ourselves as a model for you to imitate. So what they're saying is we didn't receive anything from anyone without giving something in exchange for it, returning something in exchange for what we took. This expression, we didn't eat anyone's food, it's a saying, and it has to do not just with food that you eat, but other things that we need for our physical lives, things to take care of ourselves. So it's food, it's clothing, it's shelter, it's, today we might say like internet. You know how it is stealing somebody's Wi-Fi. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But that's what it has to do with. It's not just about the physical food. It's about anything we need for sustenance, for life. And what they're saying is we didn't take anything from anyone without paying back what was due for it, without returning something in exchange. And Paul says, I didn't even take my privilege, the privilege I was really kind of entitled to. If anyone could have claimed entitlement or status to take something and not pay back for it, it was Paul. Paul elsewhere writes about how the ones who preach the gospel, who bring the good news of Jesus to other people should be compensated for that work. That's what he says. But he's actually, so what he's actually saying here is your faith, your spiritual growth. The example I wanted to set for you was more important than my compensation for the work that I was doing. And so I worked elsewhere to earn money so that I could pay for the things, everything that I took. For, if I stayed in somebody's house, I would give some kind of compensation in exchange for it. We didn't eat anyone's food. We didn't take anyone from anyone without paying something back in return for it. I think this is what he wanted to show them. If you receive from the house, you're responsible for the house. If you receive from the house, you're responsible for the house. There's no freeloaders. There's no, I'm going to take. I'm going to get everything that I can get from this community, but when it comes to my time to contribute, I'm going to actively avoid that. He says, no, that's not how we live. And I want to clarify this too, that when we contribute in a community, when we serve, when we give money to a cause or to the church even specifically, this is not about us earning heaven points. This is not us about, getting a better standing before God. This is not about salvation or eternal life. No, we receive the free gift of eternal life from Jesus when we put our faith in him and he imparts his righteousness to us. But this is a way that we follow Jesus. It is a way that we live out the life that he is inviting us into. It's a way that we show people what Jesus is like. That he is generous and not selfish. That he is not entitled, but that he pours out, gives sacrificially. That he doesn't heap burdens on people, he heaps blessings on people. That's the way that we want to live. That's how we follow Jesus in this. And so he says, follow my example. If you receive from the house, you're responsible for the house. And then he continues, not just follow my example, but do what I told you. Do what I taught you when I was there. Here's verse 10. For even when we were with you, we gave you this rule. The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. Ouch. The one who's unwilling to work shall not eat. He says, this is the rule, something I taught you. And that refers back to verse 6 when he said, the people who are not living according to the teaching that we gave to you. This is the same group of people. The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. But this is not about those who can't work, unable to physically for any reason. This is not about those who don't work because, they're kids, right? This is not about those who were, fired, laid off, for whatever reason are unemployed but seeking employment. There is a legitimate and very important place, I would argue, for charity and generosity. This is about the one, as it says, who is unwilling to work, who just says, I won't do it. There's the work in front of them, and they push it away, and they say, no, thank you. I'll take the benefits, but I'm not going to do the work. I think this is Paul's way of saying that if you receive from the house, you are responsible for the house. If you're unwilling to work, then you're not going to eat. What he has in mind is many of these believers, if you remember, we've talked about this a couple of times through the series, they're persecuted. They're being pushed out of their trade unions and their trade guilds to the point where, if I'm a carpenter, people refuse to bring their carpentry work to me to do. And so they're losing money, and it's getting worse and worse. They're being pushed out of social circles. And so Christians, believers, are becoming more and more poor, and they're living in what is essentially the equivalent of tenement housing. Lots of little rooms in one really, really big building where a whole lot of people live in one place. And what the community of believers is doing is they're actually trying to take care of each other. They would share regular meals as a community, communal meals. And we're not quite sure if that was the Lord's Supper specifically, or if it was, like dinner every night or something, or probably had to do with a combination of the two. But this is what Paul has in mind. And what he's saying is that there are idle people who don't work, who don't contribute anything to the community, but they're showing up for dinner every night. And they're not bringing a salad, they're not bringing bread, they're not bringing dessert, they're bringing nothing. And they're just consuming more and more, but they're not contributing. So Paul's saying, don't take advantage of the community, instead contribute to the community. And I get it. We kind of think this sounds a little bit harsh. This is probably one of the more harsh things. Paul's known sometimes for his harshness in what he says. This is probably one of the more harsh things that he says. But again, he's not saying you'll never eat. He's saying don't let those people just continue to take and take from the community without ever giving something in return. They can go eat somewhere else. But as part of this, he's not saying starve people. But as part of this community, everyone is a contributor, is what he's saying. And we still sometimes think this is harsh, right? Well, the church is supposed to be a place that gives. The church is supposed to be a charitable organization. And all of that is true, but we have to stop before we say the church should never expect anything from the people who receive from it. If you receive blessings from the church, then in some way, small maybe, but significant, you are responsible for what happens at the church. Here's a quote from a woman named Rachel Walchin, and she's an author, kind of a cultural commentator. I think she's kind of brilliant. I just came across her, in the last week or so preparing, but from what I've read so far, she says some very interesting things, but she's a little bit of, I would say she has Taoist leanings. So kind of believes in this kind of universal spiritual force that also lives in each one of us. And if I can maybe be, I don't know, I guess a little bit blunt, when I read the philosophies of Taoism, it's kind of like this is all just like meditation and self-help. Anyway, this is what she has to say about a very similar issue. She says, givers need to set limits because takers rarely do. In the context of self-help, we're perfectly okay with somebody saying that. Givers need to set limits because takers rarely do. But then we talk about the context of the church and we're like, no, we can't say that. We have to give. But Paul's saying, no, that's not true. Don't give your last penny for somebody who wouldn't give you one penny. What he's saying. And we still kind of think this is harsh. And can I be your pastor for a minute? Toto knows this. I've told him this before. I'll let you in on a secret. When I ask that question, it's kind of code for I'm about to say something that maybe comes off a little harsh, maybe comes a little hard. It's going to maybe step on some toes, but I think it's something that we need to hear. If we went to the emergency room and a few weeks later we get a bill in the mail and our insurance company didn't pay it, this is what would happen, right? We'd call them up. Hey, why didn't you pay my bill? Well, sir, well, ma'am, you haven't paid your health insurance premium in 6 months. We'd say, oh, okay, that makes sense. Sorry. Or we'd say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, I'm embarrassed that happened. Let me fix that immediately. I'm going to pay you the last 6 months. It makes sense to us. If we don't pay the premium, we don't get the health insurance benefit. We ask the question, why am I not getting my checks for my retirement? Why aren't you paying me? I spent all those years at the company. Well, sir or ma'am, you never contributed to the plan. Oh, that seems fair. Okay. Right? Or internet, right? I don't know why internet's on my mind today. Like we call up our service provider. Hey, why did my internet get cut off? Because you haven't paid your bill. Oh, that makes sense. That's fair. But when it comes to the church, why am I not getting to eat the communal meal? Well, because you've been eating the meal for 6 months and you haven't even brought a crouton for the salad. If I can be, pastor for a moment, I say, how dare we think that's harsh? How dare we think that we just get to receive and eat and eat and eat and reap all the benefits without any of the sacrificial service from ourselves or the giving of ourselves, whether it's financial, time, energy, resources, skills, whatever it might be. And Paul goes on to say, some of you are doing this. Some of you are freeloading. Here's verse 11 through 13. He says, we hear that some among you are idle and disruptive. That same word as before. They are not busy. They are busybodies. Such people we command and urge in the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and earn the food they eat. And as for you, brothers and sisters, never tire of doing what is good. There's a lot of things going on here, a couple of different groups that Paul is talking to and about. And the first is saying there are lots of people who look busy, but they're unproductive. They go and do a little of this, and then they go and do a little of this, and they do a little over here, but there's never any progress or production from what they're doing. And not only that, he says they're idle and disruptive. So they're actively preventing other people from doing their work. They have too much time on their hands, and so they're actively kind of getting involved in the affairs of others. What that looks like in the church is the church has a mission. We say we want to lead our neighbors to life-changing relationships with Jesus. Being idle and disruptive means not only am I just not involved in that, and there's a very fine line here, it means I'm actually preventing that. I'm working against that. Or I'm taking up somebody else's time, getting involved in their business, and it's keeping them from moving the mission forward. That's what it means to be idle and disruptive. It's this actively disruptive and distracting, gossiping, getting into other people's business instead of worrying about our own. All of this is Paul, in my mind, saying if you receive from the house, you're responsible for the house. And he says, settle down and earn your food if that's you. Settle down and earn it. I love how it says in a different translation, it says, work quietly. Put your head down and push through some work. Do some hard work and contribute to this community that you are so comfortable and so inclined already to take. Don't be reliant on the work of others. Instead, do your own and make your own contribution. And then he says, for the rest of you, don't get tired of doing good. I think he's speaking again to that place of charity and generosity. There are actually people in need. So don't focus on the people who could be working, who could be earning their keep, but who are choosing not to because they're unwilling to. Instead, go and focus on the people who actually need the help and the assistance. Invite the people to the community dinners who wouldn't eat otherwise. He says, don't give up doing good. Don't get tired of doing good. Don't get passive because passivity will lead to idleness, and idleness, unchecked long enough, will lead to this disruption that he's talking about, pulling other people away from the mission, away from their work. Now, this doesn't mean that we never get tired, because we all will. We all do get tired. Every once in a while, we need a break. But what I think Paul is getting at here is sometimes, we need to take a short season to receive, to take a break, but let that season be short. Make sure that it's short, because if it goes too long, what's going to happen is you're going to become idle, and then you're going to forget about your responsibilities, and then you're going to get comfortable, and you're going to get more idle, and then you're going to become disruptive and actively working against the mission. Whether it's intentional or not, you'll be working against the community, and you'll be preventing people who actually need help because they're unable to work just because you're unwilling. So don't give up on your responsibility. Don't miss it. Let your season of rest be a short one. Do what you got to do, get the rest you need, and then get back up on the horse, and let's keep going. There's good in work. There's good in responsibility. There's good in contributions, making contributions. In the mundane, I think this is where we can find meaning. One of the ways we can find meaning is that the grind of work has meaning when it's contributing to a community. If it's the grind of work for my own benefit, for accruing wealth and gathering all kinds of material things and buying a bigger house and a bigger car and all of that stuff, more and more entertainment, the grind of work doesn't have much meaning to it. But if we're contributing to a community, it takes on meaning. We find meaning in the mundane when we get involved and when we contribute regularly. And so I think if we look at where we receive, if we take an honest look this week and sit down and look at where we receive from, I think that each one of us will find where our responsibilities lie. That could be at the church, that could be at work, that could be at school, that could be in the family, it could be in the neighborhood, on your block, whatever it might be. If we look at where we're receiving from, we can find where our responsibilities lie. And I want to bring this really close to home. I said we're going to talk about church today. I want to bring this really, really close in for a minute, and I'm going to share a secret with you for anyone who hasn't been around church too long. There's this principle, I believe it's called the Pareto principle, or maybe you've heard of it called the 80-20 rule. Like 80% of the results come from 20% of the work. Here's another church secret. I think I shared one last week too. Here's another one. 20% of the people in churches, most churches, do 80% of the work. That's how it goes. 20% of the people do 80% of the work. This is not officially part of the statistic, but this is just my experience. You can disagree if you want. There's also 20% of the people who do 80% or maybe even 90% of the complaining. I'm just putting it out there. And here's the thing. There's very, very little overlap in those two groups. If ever any. Because I think the 20% that are doing the 80% of the work say, you know what? There's a problem there, but I'm part of this community. I'm going to contribute. I'm going to own this. I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm going to help figure this out. But the 20% on the other end would just see a problem and say, you should fix that. Now, if there's 20% who do 80% of the work, 20% who do 80% of the complaining, that leaves 60% in the middle. If you're not sure if you're in one of those 20%, you're most likely 60% in the middle. That's just how it works. And if you're in that 60%, here's what I'm going to say. You are one step away, either direction. One step away, either direction from making a meaningful contribution to community or actively working against the work of others in that community. One step away. So my encouragement is to choose action. Choose to step into action. And I'm going to say this too, if you're kind of new to the whole church thing, not sure about this Jesus business or this Jesus guy, I don't read my Bible enough yet. I need more knowledge. I need more experience, whatever it might be. Okay. That's my job to help you. We can work on that together. We can figure out a place where you can contribute and where you can be a part of the community. And here's the thing. I don't expect my 6-year-old son to go and make a $60,000 a year salary. But there are ways that he can contribute. Every kid has to grow up at some point. So if you're like, I'm just kind of a kid with this faith thing or kid with this church thing or community, I want to help you. We at Neighborhood Church want to help you get involved. And one of the ways that we can all do that, next Sunday, September 10th, after service, we're going to have a volunteer training. And I know training sounds super exciting, but it is exciting because here's what we're going to talk about. We're all of us together going to talk about greeting. What does it look like to greet somebody who shows up at Neighborhood Church on a Sunday morning, not just at the door, but like in the parking lot? Because we're excited they're here, because we've been inviting them to come, because we've been praying for them to come, because we want to see God move in their life. What does it look like to show the love and the hospitality of Jesus to those people? So we're all going to talk about greeting and hospitality. And then we're going to break up into 2 groups. And you can choose which one you want based on, what are you more experienced in? What are you interested in? What do you need more help in? Here are the 2 groups. One, our brand new kids director, Jolie. She's amazing. If you haven't met her, you should. She's going to do some training on kids ministry. Everything from check-in to, how we do the lesson and have fun with the kids in the room, to worship with the neighborhood kids, and to dismissal and, who's allowed to take the kids and who's not, because, security and things like that. And then right in here, we're going to do an AV, audiovisual training. So, and I promise you, I know that might sound intimidating if you look back at the little booth we have back there. It looks maybe a little bit intimidating, but if you know how to push a button or turn a knob, you're golden. We can teach you the rest. So next Sunday, September 10th, plan to stick around after service. We're going to do this training. It's a perfect way to jump in and say, I'm going to contribute here, and we're going to make this happen. I'm going to be involved in this community and be responsible for it. Take responsibility instead of just receive from it. And that's the thing. You'll receive something from it. This is not something that I want from you. I want to be really careful of this because I know how easy it would be to come off as this is just me, the lead pastor of a church that we're trying to start together, saying, we really need your help. We really, really need your help. We got to do all these things. We have all of these jobs to do. It's really not something that I want from you. It's really something that I want for you. Here's what I mean by that. In Mark chapter 10, verse 45, Jesus is talking about himself, and he says, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus came to serve you. Jesus came to sacrificially lay his life down for you. And serving, contributing in a community is the way that we follow him. And when we follow Jesus, we get to know him more deeply. When we take a step into responsibility for the house, for his house, this is God's house, the church. When we take a step into that responsibility, the list of things that you're responsible for will grow. That's how it works. When you take responsibility for things, your list of responsibilities grows. But I can personally guarantee you from experience, the list of things you receive will grow much, much faster. When you take some more responsibility, you'll receive deeper community, deeper friendships, deeper relationships and connections within and to the community, more opportunities to grow. And more opportunities for growth lead to more growth. You'll get a deeper faith because inevitably you're going to face something. You know, you might be running slides or something and you're like, I don't know where the band is. Jesus, help me, you know. That's a real simple example. But more than that, your faith is going to grow when you're serving. We grow the most when we're helping other people grow. We grow the most when we're serving other people. So you're going to grow. You're going to have a deeper faith and a deeper relationship and a deeper reliance on Jesus. And here's what I think will happen. If we all say, you know what, I'm committing to taking some responsibility for this house. Here's what I think happens. We have Sundays fully staffed, right? This is just the beginning. We got Sundays fully staffed, and we've got everybody, you know, who's doing one job instead of everybody doing 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 or however many some people do here. We're not worried about who's going to be running slides in the morning. We're not worried about, are we going to have enough volunteers to have that kids' room open? We're not worried about that anymore. We're able to focus on providing a welcoming, hospitable, warm, and comfortable environment for people to come and experience Jesus. And when they come and experience Jesus, it's an open invitation for them to also come alongside and contribute in the community and serve. And I just talked about what is in it for us when we begin to do that. It's not something I want from you. It's something that I want for you and for us. And we get to invite other people into that, into growing through serving. And then we get to grow closer as a team and as a community. And here's the best part. When we're no longer so concerned about just making sure we've got enough manpower for Sunday mornings, we get to expand our focus. We get to look out at the community. We get to move beyond these walls. There are real tangible needs that people have in this community. There are people who are hungry, who don't have enough food or money to buy groceries. There are people who don't have winter jackets. There are people who don't have enough money for housing. There are people who cannot provide for themselves, and those are the people that we want to be focused on. Those are the people that Paul is saying, focus on those people. Contribute so that all of you can be focused on those people. We can go and engage real felt needs that people have in their real lives with the gospel. And we can bring the kingdom of God with us, and we can see the kingdom of heaven begin to invade the earth right here in our community. And it just starts with taking a little bit of responsibility for this house so that we can move beyond it. I want to close with this thought. It's really, really easy, and I have to catch myself sometimes doing this. It's really, really easy to think of grand opening in a couple of weeks on September 17th as a finish line. We've got to fight against that with everything we've got. September 17th is not a finish line, it's a starting line. If we view September 17th, if we view grand opening as a finish line, I guarantee you, Neighborhood Church will close the doors within a year. That's just how it works. If we say we're done, we made it, we survived, we made it to grand opening, we started a church, it's not going to be started for very long. It's just the way it works. When we lose focus, when we lose sight of responsibility, it won't work. We've got to view grand opening as a starting line. And I believe that when we all take responsibility, when we take that step into responsibility for the house, it's just a starting line. So we're going to have a few moments to reflect now, and we do this just to take what we're hearing, to take the ways that God is already at work in our hearts through these words before Him, and say, God, what are you doing? What do you want to do in my life? What do you want to change in me? How are you transforming me through your word this morning? And so there's going to be 3 questions on the screen here, and again, this is not a checklist. This is just a couple of questions maybe to bring before the Lord and see what He says. And reflect with Him. Invite Him in. God, what are you saying? How would you answer these questions? Here's the first one. Is my responsibility in line with my receiving? Think about all the things that we give. I mean, we get led in worship by this team every week. That's something that we all receive. Is my responsibility, my contribution in line with that? How can I contribute to this community? How can I be a part of it? How can I actively help move the mission forward? And help our neighbors into relationships with Jesus. And here's a really important one, I think, because when we bring our burdens before the Lord, when we bring our setbacks and our human frailty and weaknesses, He takes them on Himself. And He says, I got it. Let me help you with that. What might hold me back? We just bring that question before God and see what He has to say about it. And how He wants to help us, because again, there's so much joy, there's so much anticipation, there's so much faith and peace and so many blessings that flow out of being an active, contributing piece of a community. We say, God, what might hold me back? How can you move me forward? Take those things from me so that I can be a part of this. So we'll spend a few minutes to reflect, and I'll pray in a moment just to kick that off. And after after a few minutes of reflection, the band is going to lead us in a couple more songs to close our time together this morning. So pray with me. Lord Jesus, we praise you because you came not to be served, but to serve. As Paul talks about his example in these verses, we also look to your example. We want to follow you, and we know you have so much in store for us, so much life in store for us when we live in a community the way you designed us to. And so, Lord, we just want your help figuring out how to do that and then taking the next step. So would you lead us and guide us now? Speak to us.